The emergency beacon cut through subspace like a scream. 3 light-years away, deep in the asteroid mining fields of the outer territories, a human monitoring technician named Paul Chen sat up straighter in his chair. The signal wasn't following any standard format. It was raw, desperate, broadcasting on every frequency at once. Paul patched it through to his supervisor, then to Orbital Command, then straight up the chain to Earth's Admiralty. Within 6 minutes, the message played in the war room beneath Geneva. The translation software struggled with the alien language, but the meaning came through clearly enough. Colony under attack. Thousands dying. Please help. Anyone. The Lumians of Sephra 7 had never expected their peaceful farming settlement to matter to anyone. They grew crystalline grain in the soft purple soil of their adopted world, far from the major trade routes. Their people came from a planet where gravity barely held them down, where the air was thin and sweet. They had evolved for gentleness, not survival. When the Dominion swarm appeared in their skies like a cloud of metallic locusts, the Lumians had no weapons to fight back with. They only had words, and those words became the beacon. Rachel Ortiz read the translated message 3 times. She commanded the destroyer Relentless, currently docked at Luna Station for a routine resupply. The ship was Earth's 4th-generation military vessel, built after humanity had joined the galactic community and realized just how different they were from everyone else. Most alien species designed their warships for defense and deterrence. Humans designed theirs to win. How far? Rachel asked her navigator, a young officer named Sam Torres, who was still getting used to the permanent low-gravity headache that came with space duty. 3 weeks at standard cruise, Sam replied, pulling up the star charts. Sephra 7 is in the outer band of the Lumian territories. No military presence, no defense stations, they're farmers. Can we go faster? Sam looked uncomfortable. The engines aren't rated for sustained overburn. We could push to maximum for short bursts, but 3 weeks of that would destroy the reactor seals. Command would never authorize it. Rachel studied the message again. The timestamp showed it was already 18 hours old. She thought about her own family back on Earth, her sister's farm in Colombia, the way the mountains looked in the early morning. She thought about what it would feel like to watch ships descend from the sky with nothing but murder in their programming. "Get me Admiral Wu," Rachel said. The conversation was brief. The Admiral listened to Rachel's proposal, checked the tactical readouts, and then surprised everyone by approving it immediately. Earth would send 3 ships, the Relentless and 2 support frigates, the Dauntless and the Fury. They would push their engines beyond safe limits. They would arrive in 11 days instead of 21. They might not arrive at all if the reactors melted down halfway there. "Why are we doing this?" asked David Park, Rachel's second-in-command, as the crew prepped for emergency departure. "We don't owe these Lumians anything. We've never even met them." Rachel checked her pressure suit seals and looked at him through the clear faceplate. "Because they asked for help. Because nobody else is going. Because if we don't, who will?" The 3 human ships burned out of Luna orbit with their engines screaming. Inside the Relentless, the crew felt the sustained acceleration like a weight on their chests. 3 gravities of constant thrust hour after hour, day after day. Most galactic species would have blacked out after the first hour. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, where gravity pulled hard and the atmosphere pushed back harder. They had learned to endure. Scholar Tay was hiding in the deep shelters beneath Sephra 7 when the Dominion swarm returned for their second attack. The first assault had killed 1/3 of the colony, destroying the agricultural domes and burning the settlement to ash. The Lumians had retreated underground, into tunnels that had once been used for storing grain. Now they stored refugees, thousands of them, pressed together in the darkness while the world above them burned. Tay was a historian, not a soldier. Lumian culture had no soldiers. They had diplomats, scholars, artists, farmers. They had forgotten war so long ago that they had no words for it in their modern language. Tay had to reach back into ancient texts to find the right terms for what was happening. Invasion. Slaughter. Genocide. The Dominion swarm broadcast their demands on all frequencies. Surrender the planet. Execute the colony leaders as an example. Accept integration into the Dominion or be destroyed. The Lumians had no way to fight, no way to resist. They could only wait in the dark and hope their beacon had reached someone, anyone. On the 11th day, 3 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sephra 7 system. They were damaged from the brutal pace of their journey with reactor warnings flashing red across every console. Rachel ordered the crew to battle stations anyway. They had come too far to wait. The Relentless moved toward the planet on emergency thrusters, scanning for survivors. The Dominion swarm had left a small occupation force in orbit, just 50 attack craft and 2 capital ships. They weren't expecting company. When they detected the human vessels, they sent a standard warning: leave immediately or be destroyed. Rachel opened a channel to the Dominion commander. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "This is Captain Rachel Ortiz of the Earth vessel Relentless. The Lumians called for help. We're here to give it. Leave now and you'll live." The Dominion commander responded with what the translation software interpreted as laughter. 50 ships against 3? The humans must be insane. Perhaps they were. The commander ordered his forces to attack. That was when Scholar Tay, still hiding in the deep shelters, heard something that sounded like thunder rolling across the sky above. The Lumians clustered around their emergency radios, listening to the confused chatter from the Dominion forces in orbit. They heard panic. They heard screaming. They heard the distinctive sound of human weapons fire, a rapid staccato that didn't match any known galactic technology. 14 minutes later, the Dominion occupation force was destroyed. All 50 attack craft, both capital ships, reduced to debris. The 3 human vessels hung in orbit, battered but intact. Rachel broadcast a message down to the surface in carefully translated Lumian. "This is Earth. We received your call. You're safe now." Tay would later write that the sound of the Lumians crying in relief was the most beautiful thing they had ever heard. The Lumian survivors emerged from their shelters like flowers after a storm. They climbed the access tunnels cautiously, half expecting to find Dominion soldiers waiting for them. Instead, they found their world silent, the skies clear except for 3 alien warships in orbit. Human warships. The Lumians had heard of Earth, of course. Everyone in the galactic community had heard the rumors about the Deathworld species that had somehow developed space travel. Most dismissed the stories as exaggeration. Surely no sentient race could evolve on a planet that hostile and survive. Scholar Tay requested permission to come aboard the Relentless. Rachel agreed, mostly because she wanted to understand exactly what they were protecting. The shuttle ride up from the surface gave Tay their first real look at human engineering. Everything was built heavier than it needed to be, reinforced and redundant. The walls were thick metal instead of lightweight composites. The gravity was crushing almost 1 full standard unit. Tay's thin bones ached by the time they reached the docking bay. Rachel met them at the airlock. Tay had studied human physiology in preparation, but seeing one in person was different. Rachel was shorter than most Lumians, but built like a piece of industrial equipment, all compact muscle and efficient movement. Her eyes were predator-forward, designed for tracking prey. When she smiled in greeting, Tay could see the omnivore teeth designed to tear meat. Evolution had made this species to hunt and kill, and somehow they had pointed that ability outward toward the stars. "Thank you for coming," Tay said through the translation device. "We thought we were going to die." "You're welcome," Rachel replied, "but we need to talk about what happens next. The Dominion isn't going to ignore this. They'll send more ships." They walked through the corridors of the Relentless together. Tay noticed everything. The crew moved with aggressive efficiency, their bodies comfortable in the heavy gravity. They called out to each other in short, clipped phrases, their language harsh and fast. On the walls, Tay saw symbols and markings that the translation software identified as unit insignia, kill counts, memorial notices for the dead. This was a culture built around war. In the briefing room, David Park pulled up holographic displays of the Dominion swarm's typical attack patterns. Tay watched as the simulation played out. Thousands of small attack craft moving in coordinated waves. The strategy was simple: overwhelm defensive positions through sheer numbers. Most galactic species responded by building stronger shields and waiting for the attack to exhaust itself. They'll come back with everything they have, David explained. Probably 2,000 attack craft, maybe a dozen capital ships. Standardsieger formation. They'll demand surrender again, and when you refuse, they'll start bombing the surface. Tay felt their 3 hearts flutter in distress. How do we defend against that? We have no weapons, no military. We're farmers. Rachel leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. You don't defend, we do. But I need you to understand what that means. Humans fight differently than everyone else. We're going to do things that will seem insane to you. We're going to take risks that no sane species would take. Some of us are going to die. How many? I don't know. Maybe 10% casualties if we're lucky. Maybe 50% if we're not. Tay's translator struggled with the concept. You would accept losing half your people? To save yours? Yes. The conversation shifted to tactics. Rachel explained human military doctrine, the philosophy developed over thousands of years of warfare on Earth. Lumians fought through negotiation and retreat, preserving life above all. Most galactic species did the same. Humans had learned something different. Sometimes the only way to stop a predator was to become a more dangerous predator. Sometimes mercy meant being willing to kill. We call it aggressive defense, Rachel said. We don't sit and wait for the enemy to come to us. We go to them. We hit first, hit hard, and keep hitting until they break. David pulled up another simulation, this one showing human battle tactics. Tay watched in growing horror as the human ships charged directly into enemy formations, taking damage but dealing more in return. They used something David called ramming speed, deliberately colliding with enemy vessels. They fired weapons at ranges so close that both ships took damage from the explosions. They never retreated, never fell back, never gave ground. This is suicide, Tay said quietly. It's calculated aggression, Rachel corrected. We know our ships can take more damage than theirs. We know our crews can endure more stress. We know our weapons can fire faster and hit harder. So we use those advantages. Over the next 3 days, the human crews prepared for battle. Tay watched them work with a mixture of fascination and fear. They trained constantly, running combat drills where they practiced fighting while wounded, while tired, while their ships were falling apart around them. They took stimulants that would have killed a Lumian, chemicals that sharpened their reflexes and dulled their pain responses. They checked their weapons with the care of artists, these terrible machines designed to punch through armor and shred living tissue. Sam Torres found Tay in the observation deck one evening, watching the stars. The young navigator sat down carefully, trying not to startle the nervous alien. Are you scared of us? Sam asked. Yes, Tay admitted. Your people are very different from mine. We're scared too, you know. Before every battle, fear is natural. But you fight anyway, because someone has to, because you asked for help. Sam was quiet for a moment. My family came from Earth's Philippines, islands in a warm sea. Beautiful place. But every year the storms would come, typhoons that could destroy everything we built. We learned that you don't survive by hiding. You survive by standing up and fighting back, even when the storm is bigger than you. Tay tried to understand. Your whole species thinks this way? More or less. Every human culture has the same basic story. The world tried to kill us and we refused to die. We're not aggressive because we're evil. We're aggressive because it's the only way we know how to protect the things we love. On the 4th day, the Dominion swarm returned. Their fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. A massive force of exactly 2,047 attack craft and 13 capital ships. The Dominion commander broadcast a message to the planet. Surrender immediately or face total destruction. They gave the Lumians 1 hour to decide. Rachel ordered all 3 human ships to battle stations. The crews moved with practiced efficiency, checking systems and weapons. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for casualties, laying out the surgical tools and synthetic blood. In engineering, the technicians pushed the reactors to maximum output, knowing they might not survive the next few hours. Throughout the ship, humans said goodbye to each other, just in case. They hugged, they joked, they promised to meet again after the battle. Some prayed to various gods, others just checked their weapons one more time. Tay stood in the Relentless's command center, granted permission to observe and document. Rachel sat in the command chair, her face calm despite the impossible odds. 3 ships against 2,000. It was hopeless. It was insane. The Dominion commander's voice came through the speakers. demanding to know who dared interfere with their conquest. Rachel opened a channel, her voice steady and clear. "This is Captain Rachel Ortiz of Earth. These people are under our protection. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." The Dominion commander's response was immediate. "3 ships? You're outnumbered 600 to 1. Surrender now and we'll let you leave." Rachel smiled, and Tay saw something in that expression that made their blood run cold. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted prey. "You picked the wrong species to threaten," Rachel said. Then she gave the order that would change galactic history. "All ships attack formation. Take us in." The human warships turned toward the massive Dominion fleet and accelerated. They were heading straight into the swarm, into certain death. Tay wanted to scream, to beg them to stop, to run, to save themselves. But the humans just kept going, their ships gaining speed with every second. In that moment, Tay finally understood what a Deathworlder really was. Not a monster, not a killer, but something far more terrifying. A species that simply refused to accept defeat. The Dominion swarm watched in confusion as the 3 human ships accelerated toward them. Every tactical system in the fleet registered the same analysis. This was a suicide charge. No rational species would do this. The Dominion commander hesitated for 3 full seconds, trying to understand what was happening. That hesitation was a mistake. Rachel's voice cut through the command channel. "Weapons free. Full spread." The Relentless opened fire at maximum range. Railguns spat tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to punch through 3 ships in a row. The first volley caught the Dominion formation completely unprepared. 17 attack craft simply ceased to exist, vaporized by impacts that hit harder than most ship-to-ship missiles. The 2 frigates, Dauntless and Fury, split off from the main attack vector. They curved around the flanks of the Dominion formation, firing as they moved. Their weapons were different from the destroyer's heavy railguns. They used rapid-fire plasma cutters, weapons designed for close-range combat. The superheated plasma bolts melted through Dominion hulls like acid through paper. Scholar Tay gripped the railing in the Relentless's command center as the ship bucked and twisted. The inertial dampeners could only compensate so much. Rachel was flying the destroyer like a fighter craft, pulling turns that pushed the structural integrity to the breaking point. Around them, Dominion attack craft swarmed like angry insects. Their weapons fire lit up the darkness, energy beams and missiles converging on the human ships. "Incoming fire, port side," called out the tactical officer. 47 projectiles impact in 3 seconds. "Point defense? Handle it," Rachel said calmly, not even looking away from her navigation display. The Relentless's automated defense systems engaged. Laser turrets tracked and destroyed incoming missiles with mechanical precision. The few that got through hit the ship's armored hull and detonated, shaking the vessel but doing no critical damage. Tay realized with growing amazement that the humans had built their ships to take punishment. Most galactic vessels relied on shields and evasion. Human ships were designed to absorb hits and keep fighting. Sam Torres worked the weapons console with focused intensity. Each trigger pull sent another railgun slug downrange. The computer tracked hit percentages automatically. 73% accuracy at combat ranges, each hit resulting in a destroyed or disabled enemy craft. Sam's hands moved in a rhythm: target, fire, acquire, repeat. It looked almost like a dance. David Park coordinated with the 2 frigates, calling out priority targets and adjusting tactics on the fly. The Dominion formation was designed to overwhelm through numbers, waves of attack craft supported by capital ships in the rear. The human counter-strategy was simple but brutal. Kill the small ships fast, then go after the big ones. Fury reports 53 confirmed kills, David announced. Dauntless at 49. "We're at 62 and counting," Rachel nodded. "Tell them to start run on Capital Ship 7. We're going for the command vessel." The Relentless changed course again, this time heading straight for the largest Dominion ship. It was a massive vessel, 3 times the size of the human destroyer, bristling with weapons. The Dominion commander realized the humans' intent and ordered all nearby attack craft to intercept. Hundreds of small ships converged on the Relentless, filling space with weapons fire. Rachel pushed the engines to emergency speed. The reactor warnings turned red, alarms blaring throughout the ship. The engineering crew overrode the safeties, pouring every available watt into the drive system. The Relentless accelerated to speeds that would have torn apart a ship built by any other species. The crew endured 13 gravities of thrust, their bodies pressed into their seats, breathing in short gasps. Tay watched in horror as blood vessels burst in human eyes. As nosebleeds started and went ignored, they were killing themselves just from the acceleration. And they kept going. 50 seconds to ramming distance, Sam gasped out. All hands, brace for impact, Rachel ordered. Tay finally understood. They were going to ram the capital ship. Not as a last resort, not as a desperate sacrifice, but as a deliberate tactic. The humans had calculated that their reinforced hull could survive the collision. Probably. Maybe. At the last moment, Rachel cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters. The Relentless spun sideways, presenting its armored flank to the Dominion ship. They hit at 300 meters per second. The sound was indescribable, metal screaming against metal. The impact drove the capital ship sideways, throwing its own weapons targeting off by precious degrees. More importantly, it opened a wound in the Dominion vessel's hull, a gaping tear that exposed interior compartments to vacuum. Boarding teams. Go, Rachel ordered. Sam Torres led the first team through the breach, 20 humans in powered armor, carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum of ancient warfare. Kinetic rifles, explosives, even close combat blades. They jumped across the gap between ships, magnetic boots locking onto the Dominion hull. The defending soldiers barely knew what hit them. Tay watched through the helmet cameras as Sam's team moved through the corridors of the enemy ship. The Dominion soldiers were larger than humans, better armored, evolved for combat in low-oxygen environments. None of it mattered. The humans moved faster, shot straighter, and fought with a ferocity that overwhelmed any tactical advantage. When a Dominion soldier blocked the corridor, the humans didn't stop to engage. They threw explosives, collapsed the ceiling, went through the walls. Nothing slowed them down. Bridge in sight, Sam transmitted. Breaching now. The Dominion Command Center was a fortified position designed to withstand boarding actions. The humans didn't care. They used shaped charges to blow the doors, then stormed through while the air was still filled with smoke and debris. Sam's team moved with practiced efficiency, each member covering specific angles, weapons finding targets with mechanical precision. The entire engagement lasted 8 minutes from breach to capture. Outside, the battle continued. The Dauntless and Fury had destroyed their target capital ship and were working through the remaining attack craft. The Dominion formation was falling apart, their coordinated assault breaking down into scattered dogfights. Human ships were damaged, some severely, but none were out of the fight. The destroyer Relentless had a 15-meter gash in its hull and half its weapons offline. Rachel ordered the crew to keep firing with whatever still worked. David pulled up the tactical display. Enemy formation is breaking. They're trying to retreat. Rachel studied the board. The Dominion had lost over 800 ships in the first 40 minutes of combat. Their command vessel was captured. Their remaining forces were scattered and demoralized. Standard military doctrine said to let them run, to accept the victory and lick your wounds. Rachel wasn't interested in standard doctrine. All ships pursue, she ordered. Target anything that moves. No survivors. Tay finally spoke up, their voice shaking. Captain, they're retreating. The battle is won. Why continue? Rachel turned to look at the Lumian scholar. Her face was covered in sweat and blood from a burst vessel in her nose. Her eyes were cold and focused. Because they came here to commit genocide. Because if we let them go, they'll just attack someone else. Because the only way to stop a predator is to make sure it can't hurt anyone ever again. The human ships chased the retreating Dominion forces to the edge of the system. They destroyed ships that tried to jump to faster-than-light speed. They hunted down craft that tried to hide in the asteroid field. They showed no mercy because mercy, in this context, meant allowing murderers to escape. By the time the engagement ended, the Dominion had lost 83% of their attack force. Only a handful of ships escaped to bring word back to their leaders. The human casualties were severe by any reasonable standard. 127 dead, 340 wounded. Both frigates were critically damaged and would need extensive repairs. The Relentless was in better shape but still looked like it had been through a war, which of course it had. Rachel found Tay in the medical bay watching human doctors work on the wounded. The Lumian scholar looked traumatized, their large eyes unfocused and distant. Rachel sat down next to them, moving carefully because every muscle in her body ached from the extended high-gravity combat. Are you okay? Rachel asked. I don't know, Tay admitted. I watched you fight. I saw what you did. It was terrible and beautiful, and I don't have words for it. We're not monsters if that's what you're thinking. No, Tay said slowly. You're something else. Something the galaxy has never seen before. You fight like demons, but you came here to save us. You risked everything for people you've never met. I don't understand you at all. Rachel was quiet for a moment. We're human. That's all. We've spent our entire existence fighting to survive. Fighting gravity, fighting weather, fighting predators, fighting each other. We learned how to be dangerous because the universe taught us that lesson over and over. But we also learned why to fight. Not for conquest, not for resources, but for each other. For the people who can't fight for themselves. The galaxy is going to fear you, Tay said, I know. But maybe they'll also know that when someone calls for help, humans will answer. The footage appeared on Galactic Network 17 hours after the battle ended. Scholar Tay had recorded everything from the command center of the Relentless, and after much consideration, decided the galaxy needed to see what had happened at Sephra 7. The video showed 3 human ships charging into a force 600 times their size. It showed combat maneuvers that violated every known safety protocol. It showed humans fighting at acceleration levels that should have killed them. Most shocking of all, it showed them winning. The response was immediate and divided. Half the galaxy refused to believe the footage was real. It had to be propaganda, fiction, simulation. No species could fight like that. The physics didn't work. The biology didn't work. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely 50 years out from first contact. They couldn't possibly have military technology this advanced or tactics this brutal. The other half believed, and they were terrified. On the planet Velis Prime, the ruling council watched the video in silence. Velis was a peaceful world, wealthy from trade, protected by defensive agreements with a dozen neighboring species. Their military consisted of exactly 3 patrol ships designed to chase off pirates. The council chairman turned to his defense minister with a simple question. Could we do that? No, the minister replied. Even if we had the ships, even if we had the weapons, our people couldn't survive the acceleration. The humans were pulling 13 gravities for sustained periods. That would liquefy our internal organs. Similar conversations happened across hundreds of worlds. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from 237 species gathered in the Great Hall on Unity Station, the neutral ground where galactic politics took place. The human ambassador, Dr. Helen Shaw, arrived to find herself simultaneously the most popular and most hated person in the chamber. The Dominion representative spoke first, his voice dripping with outrage. The humans violated every law of civilized warfare. They pursued retreating forces. They showed no mercy to surrendering troops. They are war criminals and must be sanctioned. Helen stood slowly. She was in her 60s, a career diplomat who had spent 30 years building Earth's reputation in the galactic community. She had always advocated for patience, for understanding, for showing the galaxy that humans could be civilized. Now she had to defend actions that looked anything but civilized. The Dominion swarm came to Sephra 7 to commit genocide, Helen said, her voice calm but firm. They killed thousands of Lumians in their first attack. They broadcast demands for the execution of colony leaders. They explicitly stated their intention to destroy everyone on that planet. My people responded to a distress call. We saved lives. If that makes us war criminals in your eyes, then I accept the judgment. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species sided with the Dominion, claiming humans were too dangerous to be trusted. Others pointed out that the Dominion had initiated the conflict and the humans had merely defended innocence. The Lumian representative stood and asked for silence. I was there, Scholar Tay said, their voice amplified through the chamber. I watched the humans fight. Yes, they were brutal. Yes, they did things that horrified me, but they also saved my entire species from extinction. They came when no one else would. They risked everything for people they had never met. You can call them violent, aggressive, dangerous, but you cannot call them evil. The debate continued for 3 days. In the end, the council reached a compromise. Earth would face no formal sanctions, but human military doctrine would be reviewed. A committee would study whether humans posed a threat to galactic peace. It was a diplomatic solution that satisfied no one and changed nothing. The real problem was developing far from the council chambers. The Dominion swarm's leadership was humiliated. They had lost nearly 2,000 ships to 3 human vessels. Their reputation as an unstoppable military force was destroyed. Worse, other species were starting to question Dominion authority. If humans could defeat them so easily, maybe they weren't as powerful as everyone believed. War leader Haxor sat in his command chamber, watching the battle footage over and over. He analyzed every human tactic, every maneuver, every decision. The humans fought without fear, without hesitation. They accepted casualties that would break any other species. They turned their ships into weapons, their bodies into tools of war. It was insane. It was also effective. Haxor made a decision. The humans had embarrassed the Dominion at Sephra 7. The only way to restore honor was to destroy the source, not just defeat the humans in battle, but eliminate them entirely. He would gather the largest fleet in Dominion history and take it to Earth itself. He would show the galaxy what happened to species that defied the swarm. The orders went out across Dominion space. Every available ship, every trained crew, every weapon system. They began gathering at staging points along the border. Intelligence estimates suggested it would take 3 months to assemble the full force. 10,000 attack craft, 200 capital ships, 50 siege platforms designed to bombard planets from orbit. It was an armada large enough to conquer a dozen worlds. Haxor would use it to destroy one. The Dominion tried to keep the buildup secret, but secrets were hard to keep in the galactic community. Within weeks, intelligence reports started reaching Earth. At first, the Admiralty dismissed them as impossible. No one would be crazy enough to attack Earth directly. The planet was heavily defended, sitting in the heart of human territory. It would be suicide. Admiral Christine Wu looked at the intelligence reports and saw something else. She saw an enemy so blinded by pride that they couldn't think rationally. She had spent 30 years in Earth's military, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. She understood how aliens thought. Most species approached war as a last resort, something to be avoided through diplomacy and deterrence. They didn't understand humans at all. Christine called an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. She laid out the intelligence, the projected timeline, the likely attack vectors. The counselors listened in growing alarm. Some suggested negotiation, offering compensation to the Dominion to avoid conflict. Others wanted to appeal to the Galactic Council to seek protection through diplomatic channels. None of that will work, Christine said bluntly. The Dominion wants revenge. They want to make an example of us. Talking won't stop them. We need to prepare for war. Can we win? Asked the defense minister. Christine studied the projected force estimates. 10,000 ships against Earth's defense fleet of 24 warships and 60 support vessels. The odds were even worse than Sephra 7. I don't know, but I know we'll fight. Across Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity had made an enemy by helping the Lumians. Now that enemy was coming for them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Civilian volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Engineers offered to convert commercial ships for military use. Weapons manufacturers went to round-the-clock production. Asteroid miners started stockpiling materials for munitions. Everyone wanted to help. Rachel Ortiz stood on the observation deck of a repair station orbiting Mars, watching her ship being rebuilt. The Relentless had survived the Battle of Sephra 7 but needed extensive repairs. The engineers estimated 3 months of work. 3 months that would bring them right to the edge of the Dominion's planned attack. She wondered if they would finish in time. She wondered if it would matter. Sam Torres found her there, looking healthier after a few weeks of recovery. The young officer had been awarded the Galactic Medal of Valor, the first human to receive the honor. Sam didn't feel heroic. Felt like they had just done their job. Admiral Wu wants to see us, Sam said. All survivors from Sephra 7. She's putting together training programs for the new recruits. Wants us to teach them how to fight. Can you teach someone to be crazy? Rachel asked with a slight smile. We're not crazy. We're just human. They reported to Earth a week later, joining hundreds of other veterans being recalled for training duty. The scale of preparation was staggering. Orbital stations being converted to weapons platforms. The moon's surface covered in railgun batteries. Mars contributing ships from its colonial defense fleet. Jupiter's moons providing fuel and supplies. Humanity was turning its entire solar system into a fortress. Scholar Tay arrived on Earth as the official Lumian ambassador, the first ever appointed to humanity. The Lumian government had voted unanimously to stand with Earth against the Dominion threat. They offered medical ships, supply vessels, and their expertise in agriculture to help feed Earth's expanding military. It wasn't much, but it was everything they had. Other species quietly began offering support. The Valiant Republic, a warrior culture that had watched the Sephra 7 footage with professional appreciation, sent military advisors. The Turn Collective provided intelligence on Dominion fleet movements. The Silk Worlds offered to shelter human civilians if Earth fell. Most of the galaxy stayed neutral, unwilling to risk Dominion retaliation, but enough help to matter. Christine Wu stood in the war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays of the solar system. Each display showed defensive positions, ship deployments, weapons platforms, minefields. They had 3 months to prepare for the largest military engagement in human history. 3 months to figure out how to survive impossible odds. Her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Richard Moss, stood beside her studying the projections. We're outnumbered 400 to 1, even with the volunteers and converted civilian ships. The Dominion will have overwhelming firepower. Standard tactics say we should evacuate Earth, retreat to the outer colonies, live to fight another day. Standard tactics, Christine said. You know what happened the last time someone told humans to follow standard tactics? Richard smiled grimly. Sephra 7, 3 ships against 600. Exactly. We don't fight like everyone else because we're not like everyone else. The Dominion is coming here expecting us to defend Earth directly. So we'll defend it, but not the way they expect. What did you have in mind? Christine turned to the displays, her mind already working through the possibilities. The Dominion thinks in terms of overwhelming force. They'll bring everything they have and expect us to crack under the pressure. But pressure is what made us in the first place. Earth's gravity, Earth's weather, Earth's predators. We evolved under pressure. Let's show them what that means. The plans began to take shape. Unconventional, dangerous, brilliant. The kind of tactics that only a Deathworld species would consider. When Rachel saw the battle plan for the first time, she laughed out loud. It was insane. It was impossible. It was perfectly human. And if they pulled it off, it would become the most famous battle in galactic history. The Dominion Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly on schedule. War Leader Haxor stood in his command chamber, watching the tactical displays light up with targets. 10,000 attack craft, 200 capital ships, 50 siege platforms, the largest military force the Dominion had ever assembled. He felt satisfaction knowing that this overwhelming show of force would finally put the upstart humans in their place. The human detection systems registered the arrival immediately. Every warning klaxon in the solar system activated at once. In the war room beneath Geneva, Admiral Christine Wu watched the enemy fleet appear on her displays like a swarm of red dots. She had known they were coming, had prepared for 3 months, but seeing the actual numbers was still sobering. She opened a channel to all human forces throughout the system. All units, this is Admiral Wu, the enemy is here. Remember your training. Trust your crews. Fight like humans. Wu out. Haxor broadcast his demands on all frequencies. Surrender immediately. Disarm all military vessels. Submit to Dominion authority or face complete destruction. Earth had 1 hour to comply. The message was designed to terrify, to break the enemy's will before the first shot was fired. It had worked on dozens of other species. Christine opened a response channel. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. War Leader Haxor, this is Admiral Wu. We received your message. Here's our response. Come and take it. The Dominion forces began their advance. They moved in the standard formation. Attack craft in the vanguard. Capital ships behind, siege platforms in the rear. They expected human forces to be concentrated around Earth, defending the homeworld. Instead, they found the first surprise. The outer system was mined, not with simple explosive charges, but with weapons specifically designed to counter Dominion tactics. Kinetic kill vehicles hiding in asteroid fields waiting for approaching ships. Nuclear mines disguised as debris. Automated railgun platforms built into captured comets. The Dominion vanguard ran straight into this defensive network and lost 800 ships before they even realized what was happening. Haxor cursed and ordered the fleet to slow down, to sweep the area for mines. This was exactly what Christine wanted. Every hour the Dominion spent clearing mines was an hour for human forces to maneuver. The battle plan didn't call for defending Earth directly. It called for turning the entire solar system into a battlefield. The first human counterattack came from Jupiter. 20 converted civilian ships, mining vessels, and cargo haulers that had been fitted with weapons came screaming out of the gas giant's gravity well. They had been hiding in the upper atmosphere, using Jupiter's magnetic field to mask their signatures. Now they emerged at combat speed, their improvised weapons batteries opening fire. The ships were commanded by civilians, ordinary people who had volunteered to fight. A transport pilot named Lisa Chen led the formation. She had spent 30 years hauling cargo between the outer planets. Her ship, the Fortune's Favor, was never designed for combat, but she had welded armor plates to the hull, mounted military-grade railguns on the cargo mounts, and filled her hold with missiles. When she gave the order to attack, her voice carried the determination of someone defending their home. All ships target the capital ships. Aim for their engines. Make every shot count. The civilian fleet tore into the Dominion formation with reckless abandon. They weren't trained soldiers, but they knew how to fly in difficult conditions. They used Jupiter's moons for cover, ducking behind Europa and Ganymede, forcing the Dominion to chase them through hazardous orbital mechanics. When the enemy got close, Lisa and her fellow pilots did something no military commander would authorize. They set their reactors to overload and rammed enemy capital ships. "This is for Earth," Lisa broadcast as her ship accelerated toward a Dominion vessel 3 times her size. "This is for humanity." The impact destroyed both ships, but it also took out a capital ship that would have bombarded Earth. Across the Jupiter battlefield, 11 other civilian vessels made the same sacrifice. Haxor watched in disbelief as untrained humans willingly destroyed themselves to slow his advance. What kind of species did this? The Dominion fleet regrouped and continued inward, more cautiously now. They approached Mars to find another surprise. The entire Martian defense fleet, 15 warships under the command of Commodore Richard Moss, waited in orbit. But they weren't preparing to defend Mars. They were preparing to attack. Richard had spent the last 3 months turning Mars into a weapons platform. The planet's lower gravity made it easy to launch projectiles into space. His engineers had built massive railguns on the surface, artillery pieces that could hit targets millions of kilometers away. When the Dominion fleet came into range, Mars opened fire. The barrage was devastating. Tungsten slugs the size of buildings launched at incredible velocities, crossing the gulf between Mars and the enemy fleet in minutes. The Dominion capital ships had thick armor designed to withstand conventional weapons. These projectiles punched through that armor like paper. 5 capital ships were destroyed in the opening salvo. 7 more were critically damaged. Haxor ordered his forces to target Mars directly, to destroy the surface installations. This was his second mistake. The Martian fleet didn't defend the planet. Instead, they attacked the Dominion siege platforms, the vulnerable support vessels that were meant to bombard Earth from a safe distance. Without their siege platforms, the Dominion would have to get much closer to Earth, much closer to the prepared defensive positions. Rachel Ortiz commanded the rebuilt Relentless, leading a strike force of 8 destroyers from their hidden position behind Luna. They had waited patiently while the enemy advanced, had watched the sacrifices at Jupiter and the battle at Mars. Now it was their turn. Rachel gave the order to attack, and the human warships came around the moon at full thrust. "All ships weapons free. Target the command vessel. We're going to cut the head off this snake." Sam Torres was at the weapons station again, fingers dancing across the controls. The past 3 months of training new recruits had been valuable, but Sam had missed this. The clarity of combat, the simple goal of defeating the enemy. The railguns spun up, targeting systems locked on, and Sam started firing. The Relentless group hit the Dominion formation from an unexpected angle. They focused their fire on a single target, Haxor's command ship. The massive vessel was the most heavily defended ship in the fleet, surrounded by escort craft and protected by overlapping shields. Rachel didn't care. She had learned at SFR 7 that shields were useless against sustained kinetic fire. The railguns just kept firing, each impact weakening the shields a little more. Haxor realized too late that he was the target. He ordered his escorts to intercept, but the human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. They danced through the defensive fire, their crews pulling 10 gravity turns that should have killed them. Some ships took damage, some lost crew to the brutal acceleration. None of them stopped fighting. "Shields down," Sam reported. "Command ship is exposed." Rachel didn't hesitate. "All ships, boarding action. Follow me in." The Relentless and 3 other destroyers accelerated directly toward the command vessel. They planned to do what they had done at SFR 7, board the enemy flagship and capture it. Haxor saw them coming and ordered all weapons to focus on the human ships. The defensive fire was overwhelming, a wall of energy and projectiles that lit up space like a storm. 2 human destroyers were destroyed in the approach. The Relentless took 17 direct hits, losing weapon systems and life support on 3 decks. Rachel kept going, her ship shaking from the impacts, alarms screaming throughout the hull. They crashed into the command vessel's docking bay, tearing through the exterior doors and into the interior spaces. Rachel led the boarding team personally, 50 Marines in powered armor, carrying weapons that were probably overkill for shipboard combat. They moved through the corridors systematically, fighting past the Dominion defenders. The enemy soldiers were professional, well-trained, and numerous. The humans were angrier. The battle for the command ship lasted 20 minutes. Rachel lost half her team getting to the bridge. She took shrapnel to the shoulder and a plasma burn to her leg but kept moving. When they finally breached the bridge, she found Haxor waiting with his personal guards. The Dominion war leader was impressive, standing nearly 3 meters tall, his armored carapace gleaming in the emergency lighting. He held a weapon designed to kill at range, something elegant and efficient. He looked at the humans with their brutal, primitive firearms and their blood-stained armor, and felt something he rarely experienced: fear. "You're the one from Sephra 7, Haxor said through his translator. "The captain who started this war." "You started it when you tried to commit genocide," Rachel replied, raising her weapon. "I'm just finishing it." They fought hand to hand. Haxor was larger, stronger, evolved for combat. Rachel was faster, meaner, and refused to stay down. He broke 2 of her ribs with a strike that should have killed her. She shot him 3 times and kept shooting until he stopped moving. When her Marines secured the bridge, Rachel collapsed against a console, breathing hard, trying to ignore the pain. "Command ship is ours," she transmitted to the fleet. "Target is down." Throughout the Dominion fleet, confusion spread. Their war leader was captured or dead, their command ship taken, their battle plan in ruins. Some captains tried to rally their forces. Others began to retreat. A few even surrendered, something the Dominion military had never done in their entire history. Admiral Christine Wu watched from the war room as the battle shifted. The Dominion still had overwhelming numbers, but they had lost cohesion. She ordered all human forces to press the attack, to give the enemy no time to reorganize. Earth's defense fleet moved out from their defensive positions around the planet, finally entering the battle in force. The fighting continued for 6 more hours. It was brutal, chaotic, nothing like the clean, tactical simulations. Ships collided, weapons overheated, crews fought past exhaustion. The Dominion tried to retreat, but human ships pursued them relentlessly. Some Dominion captains surrendered. Most died fighting. By the time the last enemy ship jumped to faster than light speed, the Dominion swarm had lost 82% of their invasion force. The human casualties were staggering. 34 warships destroyed, countless civilian volunteers dead, over 18,000 casualties across all forces. The solar system was littered with debris and bodies. Mars had burn scars on its surface from weapons fire. Jupiter's orbit was filled with wreckage. Earth itself had taken damage from long-range bombardment, though the planetary shields had held. Rachel woke up in a hospital ship 3 days later. Her injuries would take months to heal, but she had survived. Sam Torres was in the next bed, recovering from a concussion and broken arm. They looked at each other and started laughing, the slightly hysterical laughter of people who had survived something they shouldn't have. Scholar Tay visited them, bringing news from the galactic networks. The Battle of Sol was already becoming legend. Species across the galaxy had watched the footage, stunned by the scale of the engagement. Some called humans saviors. Others called them demons. Most just called them terrifying. "What happens now?" Rachel asked. Tay considered the question carefully. "Now the galaxy has to decide what to do with you. You've proven you can fight. You've proven you'll defend others. But you've also proven you're willing to do things that scare everyone else. The question is whether we can learn to live with that." Rachel closed her eyes, feeling the weight of that statement. Humanity had wanted to join the galactic community as friends. Instead, they had become the galaxy's most feared warriors. She hoped that wouldn't be their only legacy. The Galactic Council convened 6 weeks after the Battle of Sol. The Great Hall on Unity Station was packed with representatives from every species in the community. They had come to decide the future of human-galactic relations, to determine if Earth should be embraced or isolated. The debate had been raging since the battle ended, with no clear consensus emerging. Some species admired human courage, others feared human violence. Everyone agreed that something had to be decided. Rachel Ortiz arrived at the station with her arm still in a medical brace. The doctors had wanted her to stay in recovery for another month, but the Admiralty had requested her presence at the council meeting. She was the face of human military action, the captain who had fought at both Sephra 7 and Sol. Her testimony would matter. She walked through the corridors of Unity Station with Scholar Tay beside her, feeling the stares of alien delegates. Some looked at her with respect, others with fear, a few with outright hostility. The Dominion representative spoke first, as was their right as the aggrieved party. The new war leader, a cautious bureaucrat named Gresh, stood before the council and made his case. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They pursued retreating forces, fought beyond reasonable casualties, and showed no mercy to defeated enemies. They violated every civilized norm of warfare. The Dominion requested that humans be restricted to their own system, quarantined from the rest of the galaxy for everyone's safety. Several species voiced agreement. The Tellian Compact, a peaceful alliance of agricultural worlds, argued that humanity's presence destabilized the region. The Crystal Chorus, beings of pure energy who found physical violence abhorrent, called for Earth to be expelled from the Galactic Council entirely. Others remained silent, unwilling to support the Dominion but uncomfortable defending humans. Then Rachel was called to testify. She walked to the central platform feeling the weight of 200 alien gazes. The translator collar around her neck would carry her words to every species present. She thought about what to say, how to defend humanity without making things worse. Finally, she just decided to tell the truth. My name is Rachel Ortiz. I command the destroyer Relentless. 3 months ago, I received a distress call from Sephra 7. A peaceful colony was being destroyed by the Dominion swarm. They called for help. My people answered that call even though we had no treaty obligation, no strategic interest, and no guarantee of survival. We went because it was the right thing to do. She paused, looking at the Dominion representative. Yes, we fought brutally. Yes, we pursued your retreating forces. You want to know why? Because you came to Sephra 7 with the explicit intention of committing genocide. You broadcast demands for the execution of innocent people. You gave us 2 choices: let thousands die or fight with everything we had. We chose to fight, Gresh interrupted. You could have negotiated. You could have found a diplomatic solution. We tried talking, Rachel said, her voice hard. You responded by shooting at us. There's no negotiating with someone who views your existence as an insult. So we did what humans have always done when faced with extinction. We survived, and we made sure you couldn't hurt anyone else. An elderly representative from the Valiant Republic stood, requesting permission to speak. The Valiant were warriors themselves, though far less aggressive than humans. Their delegate, a scarred veteran named Quen, looked at Rachel with professional respect. I have studied the battles at Sephra 7 and Sol, Quen said. I have analyzed human tactics, reviewed casualty reports, and interviewed survivors. What I found was not mindless violence but calculated aggression in defense of others. The humans took risks that would destroy my people, but they did so to save lives. They are fierce, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But they are not evil. They are survivors. Scholar Tay stood next, their thin frame seeming fragile in the formal robes of a Lumian ambassador. The humans saved my species, not because we could offer them anything in return, not because they had strategic reasons. They saved us because we asked for help. Is that truly something to fear? Or is it something we should be grateful for? The debate continued for hours. Arguments for and against, species taking sides based on their own experiences and prejudices. Finally, Dr. Helen Shaw, Earth's senior ambassador, requested permission to address the council. She was the oldest human present, a diplomat who had spent her entire career trying to build bridges between Earth and the galaxy. She walked slowly to the platform, her movements deliberate. I have listened to your concerns, Helen said. I understand your fear. Humans are different. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight because it was the only way to survive. But we also learned why to fight. Not for conquest, not for resources, but for each other. For our families, our communities, our ideals. She turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with delegates throughout the hall. You say we're violent. You're right, we are. But we're also the species that ran toward danger to save people we'd never met. We're the species that turned our entire solar system into a fortress to protect Earth, knowing some of us wouldn't survive. We're the species that accepts devastating casualties to defend principles we believe in. Yes, we fight like demons, but we fight for angels. The vote took 3 days. Representatives consulted with their home governments, debated among themselves, and struggled with the question of what to do with humanity. In the end, the decision was surprisingly clear. Earth would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Humans would be offered a seat on the Security Council, with the responsibility to help defend other species from aggression. In exchange, humanity would agree to share their military technology and train other species in defensive tactics. The Dominion swarm faced sanctions for their attempted genocide at Sephra 7 and their invasion of Sol. War leader Haxor and his surviving command staff would face trial for war crimes. The Dominion military would be restricted and monitored. It wasn't the complete justice some species demanded, but it was something. Rachel watched the vote results appear on the display screens and felt mixed emotions. They had won, but at such cost. 18,000 human casualties, dozens of ships destroyed, families torn apart. She thought about Lisa Chen and the other civilian volunteers who had sacrificed themselves at Jupiter. She thought about the Marines who had died taking the Dominion command ship. Victory felt hollow when you counted the price. 5 years passed. The galaxy adjusted to humanity's presence, slowly learning to accept their strange new allies. Human military advisors taught defensive tactics at training academies across dozens of worlds. The techniques were carefully modified, recognizing that no other species could endure what humans endured in combat. But even the modified versions proved effective. Species that had relied entirely on defensive positions learned the value of aggressive defense. Pirates and raiders found their targets much more dangerous than before. Earth became a hub for defensive alliances. 40 species signed mutual defense agreements, knowing that if they were attacked, humans would respond. The Deathworlder reputation that had initially caused fear became a source of security. Raiders avoided systems under human protection. Aggressive empires thought twice before starting wars. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful, paradoxically, because of humanity's capacity for violence. Rachel retired from active military service and became an instructor at Earth's Naval Academy. She taught tactics, strategy, and the philosophy behind human military doctrine. Her students came from dozens of species, all trying to understand how humans thought about warfare. She emphasized the same lessons over and over. Fight to protect, never fight for conquest. Accept casualties to save lives, but never waste lives carelessly. Be prepared for violence, but always prefer peace. Scholar Tay completed their book about humanity, a comprehensive study that became required reading for diplomats throughout the galaxy. The title was simple: Understanding Deathworlders. It explained human evolution, culture, and psychology in terms other species could comprehend. The final chapter addressed the central question that had dominated galactic discourse for years. Should we fear humans? Tay's answer was nuanced. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they were capable of terrible violence, but they were also capable of incredible compassion, selfless sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. The key was understanding that humans didn't separate these traits. Their violence and their compassion came from the same source, a deep commitment to protecting what they valued. Fear them if you threatened their people. Trust them if you called them friends. Sam Torres received a promotion to captain and took command of a new destroyer, the Defiant. The ship was part of the Rapid Response Fleet, stationed at the edge of human space, ready to answer distress calls from anywhere in the region. It was the role humanity had carved out for itself in the galactic community. The first responders, the ones who showed up when everything else had failed. One evening, Sam sat in the command chair during a quiet night shift reviewing star charts. The communications officer, a young woman named Beth Park, looked up from her station with a concerned expression. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. Unknown species under attack by raiders. They're requesting immediate assistance." Sam felt that familiar mix of anticipation and dread. Another call for help. Another chance to prove that humans could be trusted. She checked the location. 3 days away at maximum speed. They would arrive exhausted, probably outnumbered, definitely risking their lives for strangers. "Set course," Sam ordered. "Maximum burn. Let them know we're coming." As the Defiant turned toward the distress signal, Sam thought about Rachel's lessons, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that still didn't fully understand them. They were violent, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But they were also the species that answered calls for help, that ran toward danger instead of away from it, that believed some things were worth fighting for. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward another battle, another chance to save lives. Behind them, Earth continued its quiet revolution of the galaxy, teaching other species that strength didn't have to mean aggression, that weapons didn't have to mean conquest, that the capacity for violence could be turned toward protection. The message that had started everything, that simple distress call from Sephra 7, had changed the galaxy in ways no one had predicted. It had revealed humanity to the stars, shown them what Deathworlders really were. Not monsters, not conquerors, but survivors who had learned that the only thing worth surviving for was each other. And now, whenever a species faced extinction, whenever a colony called for help, whenever the darkness seemed overwhelming, they knew who to contact. They sent an SOS to Earth, and the Deathworlder Warships answered. Every single time. Not because humans were required to, not because there was profit in it, but because someone needed help, and humans had learned long ago that the only real civilization was one where the strong protected the weak. In the end, that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not superior weapons, not brilliant tactics, not the capacity for violence. It was something simpler and more profound. The promise that if you called for help, someone would come. And they would fight like demons to save you because that's what humans did. They fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The stars shone bright over Earth that night, and across the galaxy, species looked at those stars with a little less fear. The Deathworlders were out there, yes, but they were on your side, and that made all the difference.